Hello, welcome to this Moneybox podcast. More than half of one bank's first-time buyers are trying to pay their mortgage off early. But is overpaying always a good idea? Have you got an up-to-date will? If not, book now to make one with a solicitor free. Well, almost. And there's been a big surge in texts saying claim winter fuel payment. Delete them. They're from thieves. But first, is a business you don't recognise dipping into your bank or credit card account every month and taking out money? It happens a lot. They're called recurring payments, and whenever you give your debit or credit card number online or on the phone, you're potentially setting one up. Firms are very good at turning a one-off special offer into a regular payment. Thousands of unsuspecting shoppers have said they're having money taken without their knowledge. Trading Standards says it's outrageous these regular payments are being taken without explicit consent. Dan Whitworth in our Salford studio. Dan, they're not all bad, though, recurring payments, are they?
No, and when they're used in the right way, Paul, they're actually a really helpful way for people to manage monthly payments or subscriptions for products or services. Most people will probably be aware of them for being used to pay for things like streaming music, films or TV, but also as well as monthly discount clubs, magazine subscriptions or gym memberships. The problem is, as we've been finding out, thousands of people are complaining on review sites online that they're being hit with unauthorised recurring card payments. So money's being taken out of their account for things they say they didn't intend to sign up for and sometimes don't even know anything about.
And how much money is going this way from people's accounts?
Well, typically, these individual payments, they're usually quite low, 10, 20, 30 pounds or so. And obviously, if they're unauthorised and people spot them quickly enough, they complain to their bank and any future payments can be stopped. But they can also complain to the company involved and previous payments can be refunded. The problem is, Paul, if people don't spot them, they can quickly add up. And that's what happened to John Savage from Southampton, who emailed Moneybox. So he has a joint bank account with his wife. It's a busy account, lots of payments going in and out on a regular basis. But he noticed a strange, small monthly payment that he didn't recognise. Now, I went to speak to him at Knutsford Services on the M6 during a break in his journey from Glasgow to the south coast of England. And he told me he did some digging and it turns out this monthly payment had been getting taken from his account for nearly 10 years, totalling more than £1,700. Did you have any idea, any knowledge what this money was supposed to be paying for, what you'd supposedly signed up to? Because the rules are really specific. It has to be clear. People have to know what they're getting into. Does that apply to you?
No, I had absolutely no idea at all.
Right, so John, I've just pulled up the FCA, so the Financial Conduct Authority, the regulator on this, and I'm reading it here from my phone. Unauthorised recurring card payments, that's what you're saying this is. Businesses can only take recurring payments from your card with your consent. And the next line is the key line. Your consent should be clear, specific and informed for it to be valid. Was it clear, specific and informed then, John?
Absolutely not. It just seems to me that there's some little button on a website somewhere and it says, hey, do you want 15 quid free? And you go, or a voucher for a product or whatever. And you go, oh, that's interesting. And you look at it and you explore it a bit and then you realise it's a waste of time. So you just ditch it. And that's what happens. And somehow they're able to get hold of you and just continually drag this money out of your account. And the problem is, of course, we all do so much online banking that it's really hard to pick up on that unless you really go and check. They did come through to me and said that they owed me £1,776, and they're quite forthcoming. They seem to be this is affecting. But I think 90% of the people who are locked into all this, the money is still going out of their accounts and they don't know about it. And it's really important that people check their accounts, check spam emails for these people and get their money back as soon as possible.
What do you think of this behaviour and the impact? I mean, there's a proper impact on personal finances here. Nearly £2,000 taken from you without your knowledge.
All it is about separating ordinary people from their money, and I think it's absolutely disgraceful.
Now, the good news is that in this case, John did get his money back. He complained to his bank, he complained to the company involved, and albeit after lots of emails and phone calls, he did eventually get a full refund, but it took well over a month. Now, the advice on this issue, Paul, of unauthorised recurring card payments, do you know what? It's really simple. If you notice a card payment going out of your bank account you don't recognise, complain to your bank and get any subsequent payments stopped. Then complain to the company involved and demand your money back.
Thanks, Dan. Well, live now to talk to Catherine Hart. She's the lead officer for scams at the Chartered Trading Standards Institute. Catherine Hart, John completely clear there that he did not knowingly authorise this payment. Do we know how big a problem this is?
I don't think we can actually put a figure on it. We know that these things are occurring. We've seen the reviews. But what I think is so outrageous is the consumer confusion that was involved with this. I mean, how can they make an informed decision if they don't know the full facts? And isn't it shocking that the people aren't finding out until months or even years later that this amount of money is going out of their bank accounts?
Yes, and the consumer organisation, which found they surveyed 2,000 people, more than a third of them had found unrecognised payments in their bank statements. But as John said, many people don't look or don't notice, or maybe they're too embarrassed to think, well, maybe I've been doing something stupid.
Well, I think this is the thing here. First of all, we need to keep an eye on where our money is going, but also I do think that the banks need to take a little bit of more responsibility of perhaps monitoring some of these where this money is actually going. I don't think it's very easy to actually find out what is your direct debits, your standing orders, and what your recurring car payments are. And I think that we certainly need to have a look at that a little bit better.
Yes, I did call some of the banks yesterday, and one or two of them said they could not provide me with a list of recurring payments. Others are doing it, others are sort of halfway to doing it. But do you think, just as with standing orders and direct debits, you should be able to see a list of these and then you could more easily go through them rather than looking for an odd payment in, 100 odd payments in a month?
I agree with you completely. In fact, I was not aware that it wasn't so obvious about the recurring car payments. So that was actually news to how difficult it was actually to see these recurring car payments. So absolutely, I really do think that the banks should be making that more clear, because also at the end of the day, it would help people be a little bit more aware of where their hard-earned money is actually going.
Now, Dan explained to John, the guidance from the regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, is absolutely clear. For a payment to be valid, the consent has to be given. It has to be clear, specific and informed. If thousands of people are finding payments and they haven't given that clear, specific agreement, how are they getting away with it, these firms?
Well, I think a lot of the time is because people are not aware. As John said, I mean, unfortunately, he was a victim of this for 10 years. When I say a victim, insofar as he did not know that these recurring unauthorized payments were taken out of his bank account for so long. I mean, the rights of consumer, as we know, that for any contract whatsoever, it's got to be given in a format that's understood by the average normal consumer. Yes. And in this case, these consumers, nobody is given enough information to make an informed choice.
And Jeff has emailed to say it happened with him with an annual subscription for software, which he actually cancelled within 28 days. But then he got the next payment was taken, and he's afraid another one might be. So how important is it to cancel with your bank? Because once you've done that, they have to be stopped, don't they?
Absolutely. So first of all, it's so important to get hold of your bank, cancel that subscription. But also, it's so important to speak out about it. Let us know, let trading standards, let law enforcement know that this is an issue. Because if we don't know it's an issue, then we can't sort of give the business advice, but also give the clear consumer advice as well.
Catherine Hart from Trading Standards Institute, thanks very much indeed. Now, we often report on the programme about the problems of first-time buyers, struggling to find a deposit, can't afford the monthly payments, but a report by the high street bank TSB has found that 2/3 of its recent first-time buyers are managing to overpay their mortgage. 1 in 6 hopes to be mortgage-free by the time they're 40. These are surprising findings to me. It's from their quarterly monthly report of a survey of 1,000 first-time buyers in the last 5 years. Our reporter Joe Krasner spoke to people in Liverpool about how they're coping with their mortgage.
So we've had our mortgage for 5 years. We took it out on a 15-year term. We recently tried to reduce the term, but decided to keep our payments the same.
Why did you think of reducing the term?
Just to get rid of it more quickly and have more disposable income. We were renting before, so we knew how much we could afford. So we increased our monthly payments to match what we were paying in rent, and that shortened the term.
So if you did have some spare cash, where would that go?
Savings, accessible savings.
No, we're not making overpayments. We don't have enough money. We have a small family, we can't afford it.
I feel like paying the mortgage off would give us more money in the long term.
If you had the opportunity, what would you prioritise? Paying off some of your mortgage or putting some money into a pension?
Probably paying off the mortgage, I imagine, yeah.
And if you could overpay, would you?
Yes. It feels like having that not hang over our head for the long term would be a good thing.
I own a house, it's my second mortgage, but we did have to get it over 35 years, and if we didn't do that, it just wouldn't have been possible. I can understand people wanting to shave time off, but for me, it wouldn't be realistic right now. We pay £1,500 per month. That's the maximum we can go, and we've got that locked in for 5 years.
So is the mortgage your priority? If you had any spare cash, what would you do with it?
It wouldn't be putting it towards the mortgage, to be honest, no. It would just be to spend on life. Life's expensive now.
Various views there in Liverpool, but Joshua got in touch from Bristol to tell us he and his wife are making overpayments on their mortgage.
We purchased the property in 2017. We fixed it for 5 years towards the end of 2021. So we got really, really lucky with what we're paying now. So we're about 3% less than the present fixed rates that are being offered in the market. So fortunately, we're fixed through until the end of next year. With that in mind, we have both since are earning more money. And so we decided to sort of overpay while we could, while the timing is good, because when our fix comes up at the end of next year, the extra that we're overpaying at the moment is going to be gobbled up by the increase in the rate that we pay. And I also have a slight fear that we're going to end up extending the term in order to keep the repayments around about the level that we're paying at the moment, which is where we're comfortable.
Other listeners overpaying are Steve and his wife from Staffordshire.
Our mortgage is £560 a month at 2.15% interest. We pay £900 a month, so we're overpaying by £340. We do this primarily to reduce the final cost of the house, which you've factored in on the interest over the term, but we still intend to do this when our mortgage rate doubles early next year. We're able to do this because of things probably we don't do, like buying things on finance or credit or having multiple holidays a year. We generally just try and live within our means and what we can afford.
Well, listening to that is Craig Calder. He's Director of Lending at TSB, and he worked on that report. Craig Calder, 67% of your first-time buyers choosing to overpay. That is in contrast with stories of people struggling to meet their payments, isn't it?
Yes, good afternoon, Paul. Thanks for having me on. So I think what you heard there from your listeners was a very diverse range of opinions of those who are able to overpay and those can't. 67% is a very surprising number, but looking at Joshua's case study, for example, who you just played out, he took his mortgage when rates were very low, so he's actually using that spare capacity he has to overpay. But other homeowners who aren't able to do that, as you said yourself, are looking to prioritise life and having a nice time.
Yes, I suppose people who have got those very low rates are at an advantage. Is overpaying less of an option now for today's buyers?
It's not necessarily less of an option. It's just some homeowners are choosing to prioritise differently. So for those that we surveyed who aren't overpaying, some of it is affordability. So about half of the customers said it was about affordability. Some were quite sensibly building a safety buffer or saving for the future, or as you said, prioritising now and just living life now.
We've had an email from Richard who says, I did the 10% overpayment, which I was allowed, and paid my mortgage off years earlier. How much can you save by overpaying on your mortgage?
Look, even paying something simple like £50 a month on a sort of 31-year term mortgage could save you about £18,000 of interest, and 3 years on your mortgage. That's assuming you were paying 4.5% for the term of the mortgage. But even a relatively small amount, by giving up other things, you see homeowners are giving up they're doing the fake-aways as opposed to the takeaway, or they're missing out the coffee, for example, and building up a little bit of savings reserve and looking to pay that into their mortgage. So, it varies by the amount you want to pay, but even something quite simple like £50 can save term off the mortgage.
Yeah, so you pay less interest, you pay it off earlier, so
yep.
Win-win in a way. Is it always a good idea, though? I mean, people may prefer to pay the money, if they've got any spare money, into a pension or save it, like that woman in Liverpool told us. There are circumstances when it's probably not such a good idea.
That's exactly right. It's about balance and having the priorities for your own financial circumstances. One thing that was surprising in the 1,000 first-time buyers that we looked at, only 25% of them were thinking about their pension savings, which probably feels a little low. I think for me, I would be balancing across having an emergency fund, paying into my pension and thinking about overpaying my mortgage.
Yes, that's of course assuming that you do have some spare money, which we know not everyone does. And just briefly, if you would, Craig, what would you say to someone who's listening to this and thinking, oh, that sounds not a bad idea? What are the steps to think about whether it's a good idea or not, briefly?
So have a look at some online calculators that tell you how much you could save. Really think about how much money you have left at the end of the month, and do a proper budget and have balance to your savings and your future goals.
Craig Calder of TSB, thanks very much. And first-time buyers are also the topic for next week's Moneybox Live on Wednesday with Felicity Hannah. What's the market like now for first-time buyers? How easy is it for them to get a mortgage? And is any help from the government available? Felicity, I'd love to hear your questions and experiences. Email moneybox@bbc.co.uk or send a voice note or comment on WhatsApp 03306 783 183. And more than half the adults in the UK don't have a will. So if they die, and people can die at any age, they'll have no say in how their money, property and possessions are distributed. And if you're listening smugly thinking, oh, I've got a will, remember that you should review it periodically as well, especially if your family has grown or changed, your relationships have altered, and if you marry or form a civil partnership, any will made before that is normally invalid. It doesn't apply in Scotland, but even there, you should revisit your will after such a major change. Now, I mention all this this today because next month, November, is Will Aid, where solicitors all over the UK make wills free. Well, almost. In exchange, they do want a donation to their charitable fund. It supports 8 charities, including Age UK, Shelter, the NSPCC, the Red Cross, and they suggest a donation of £120 for a single basic will, £200 for a pair of wills for a couple, and that is a lot cheaper than a solicitor will normally charge. Let's go live now to talk to Trusha Hirani. She's founder of Touch Solicitors in Oldham, who's taking part in Will Aid this year. Trusha Hirani, I'm sure some listeners are thinking, I've seen wills advertised for 20 quid or even free if you download a form. Why is going to a qualified solicitor so important?
Hi Paul, thanks for having me. So a will is such an important document. You want to make sure that it's right. Online wills aren't bespoke to your requirements, and there might be major things that you haven't considered. You might have young children, you might have a house. There'll be things like, thinking about trusts perhaps that you might need to consider for children who have got additional needs. So doing a will online for £20 doesn't always cut, and satisfy all the needs.
And of course, you never know if it's wrong, do you? It's your heirs that pick up the pieces afterwards. Now, you say the cost of a basic will through Will Aid in November will be £120, or if it's a couple where their wills sort of reflect each other, mirror wills, I think you call them, it's £200. Does that cover all wills, though? Does that cover everything, however complicated your circumstances are?
No, so Will Aid's a great scheme. It covers a basic will. So if you want anything more complicated, there's always going to be an additional charge. However, the tip is always start small. The first step is always get a basic will in place. You can always change it, add to it, as your circumstances change. As you said at the beginning, as time goes on, you might buy a property, you might receive an inheritance. So it is really a good idea to revisit that will every couple of years. The good thing about Will Aid is they do use qualified solicitors, so you're going to speak to the right expert. It's definitely worth the donation to the charities. You're doing a win-win, supporting the charities, you get a great will.
And of course, with a solicitor, they are regulated, and if things do go wrong, then you can get compensation or take action, can't you, or your heirs can. Now, what happens if you die without a will? Why is it that important? I mean, I had a message from a lady, actually, she wants to remain anonymous, but she said her friend lived with his partner for 20 years. The friend died without a will, and the partner's brother inherited everything, not the partner. Is that right? Is that what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. So legally, what would happen is everything would pass to the spouse, subject to the statutory limit, and then children. If there's no children, it's parents, and then obviously siblings. So you want to make sure that people that you don't know, perhaps nieces, nephews, long-lost relatives, don't end up inheriting.
But you mentioned a partner. I mean, that's not that's a spouse or a civil partner. If you're not in a formal relationship, then you don't count at all, do you?
Absolutely. So a lot more people are in partnerships now, and they're not civil partnerships, so they're legally not entitled to anything from the estate.
Yes. Now, it's often older people. I think more older people do make wills, but I did a calculation once that every half hour in the UK, someone in their 40s dies. So, you've got to think about it at any age, haven't you?
Absolutely. I mean, the earliest age you can make a will is currently 18. They are changing that to 16. But most people start work at 18. So, you're already accumulating funds, aren't you?
And just tell me briefly how you apply for a Will Aid appointment.
So you sign up to the dashboard, register your details, and you'll be connected with one of the over 200 participating solicitors. So it's very easy to do. They talk you through the whole process. And yeah, it's very simple.
Okay, and that's at willaid.org, or there is a phone number, 0300 0300 013, I think. Trusha Hirani of Touch Solicitors, thanks very much. Now, millions of pensioners are being warned this week not to respond to messages or texts inviting them to claim the winter fuel payment. They are fakes. They're written by thieves. They want you to click on a link and steal your data. Later, perhaps, use it to steal your money as well. And Dan's back. He has more. Dan.
Yes, Paul. So in the next few weeks, around 11 million pensioners will get a letter from the Department for Work and Pensions telling them how much winter fuel payment will be paid into their bank account in November or December. Ranges from £100 to £300. But this week, the DWP has warned of a spike in the number of scam text messages telling pensioners to claim it. As you say, Paul, those messages are fake. Anyone born on the 21st of September 1959 or earlier will get the payment, crucially, automatically. They do not have to claim. And that applies in Scotland too, where it's called the Pension Age Winter Heating Payment. It's a few pounds more than the rest of the UK.
So what should people do, Dan, if they get one of these fake texts?
First, do not respond or engage with it in any way. Secondly, if it's a text, forward forward it to 7726. That spells out spam on your phone's keypad, 7726, so it can be investigated. And thirdly, delete it permanently. But the most important one is the first one. Do not click on it. Do not engage with it. As you said, Paul, that message is from a thief.
Great advice. Thanks very much, Dan. And we'll leave this podcast with that serious warning for people over 66. Please pass it on to all the older people you know. And remember, if you do get the payment but your income is over £35,000 this tax year, it'll be taken back next tax year. You can hear the show live on BBC Radio 4 midday on Saturdays, and Moneybox Live is 3 p.m. on Wednesdays. You can help set our agenda, as John did, by emailing moneybox@bbc.co.uk, or send a voice note or comment to our WhatsApp number 03306 783 183. We do read them all. Today the reporters were Dan Whitworth and Joe Krasner, researcher Emma Devlin, studio producer Robert Cave, studio manager Toby James.